Hello, greetings, and welcome to the Dividing Line. My name's James White, coming to you live from Flower Mound, Texas. It's been fun getting here this week. Chasing this monster winter storm across the United States. I will tell you that Grok did something funny for me. Grok has this image, you can animate your pictures and stuff. And I got to Sweetwater, Texas, and not the biggest town on the planet. And it was once, the road, the I-20, I-10, I-20 were fine. There'd be a few little wet spots on some curves or something like that, maybe under a bridge. Nothing that was really bad. And it was getting warmer during the days. So, but you get off the main highway and the side streets are just a mess. I could see the access road on the side. Ooh, that's ugly. And so I get off at Sweetwater. I need to get fuel. And there's Love's travel stop that's on. We have this fuel card. My rig's so big, I have to go back with the big trucks, with the diesel trucks. I'm only 10 feet shorter than they are. Same height, too. And I need all the same stuff, diesel and DEF. I hate DEF. Anyway, so I'm getting fuel, and I look across the way, and there's an RV park. I'm like, that's got to be the RV park I'm going to. Well, it was. Right across the street. Slush everywhere. But slush isn't that dangerous for me. I mean, our new pole vehicle is 8,500 pounds by itself. When I'm hooked up, I'm over 24,000 pounds. So pretty heavy, drives through stuff pretty well. So I go down this hill, and the office is up a little hill. Well, okay, I've been driving in slush and don't have any problem getting up the hill. So I stop at the office, and the office is already closed. I'm like, oh, great. So you have to grab this little envelope thing, and you pay in the morning and just pick your spot. I'm like, oh, great. So anyway, I get back in the truck, and I can go nowhere. I have parked on 2-inch thick ice, zero traction. And I'm just spinning out. So I'm like, okay, get all the wheels straight, put it in neutral, hope this thing doesn't slide back down the hill, and put in 4-wheel drive low. Because it's 4-wheel drive, it's a powerful truck. All 4 wheels just spinning, just creating these really pretty ice sculptures. And there's a real nice guy. I don't even know how he saw me. He's living there in the park, and he drives up. Mine's a 2500 HD. He had a 1500. It's 4-wheel drive. He puts his in 4-wheel drive, chains up to my front chain connection, and nothing. He's pulling, I'm pulling. We ain't going anywhere because we're just all on ice. There's no traction. So I'm like, what in the world am I going to do? And they tell me that the owner of the RV park also owns the restaurant over here and this quick stop type thing over here. So I go crunching through the snow over to the store, and the folks were so nice. They really were. They went out of their way to make phone calls for me, and they call a wrecker, and a heavy duty wrecker, and it's going to be 2.5 hours before it can get there because they're pulling trucks out of messes all over the place. And meanwhile, there's this simple guy, and he talks slow, he's a simple guy at the store, one of the employees. And I noticed he sort of disappeared. And I go walking back to the truck, and I take a picture of it. That's the picture I gave to Grok's Imagine, and it did some funny things with it. But I took a picture of me stuck in the ice and sent it to our road trip signal group. And everybody's like, oh, great. And then I see this guy out there, the employee, and I come walking up to the truck, and he has taken some of the ice melting stuff that they use at the store, and he's put it on both sides of all 4 of my wheels. And he goes, just give that a few minutes, he says. So I did. I didn't know what this stuff was. I live in Phoenix. Believe me, we've ordered it. It's being delivered back to Phoenix. We tried to get it delivered here, but it didn't work. Um, and so I give it a few minutes, and I get in, four-wheel drive low, and hit the gas, and there's a little delay, and then boom, off I go. As soon as it bit and got pavement, like I said, 6.6 liter turbo diesel with a 10-speed Allison, four-wheel drive low, it pulled a house off the foundations, and off I went. And the other guy that had tried to pull me out before had said, "Well, if you get going, that slot right there is the flattest one," and it was closest too. So I just went over and got parked and got plugged in, and everything was fine. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, it's just like, what am I supposed to do here? And I did have chains, and so that was a possibility. That was the next thing to try. But to be honest with you, I've never put them on before. Need to do that. But man, that ice was thick, thick, thick. And then I ended up staying an extra day there, and that was providential. Last night we had the dialogue with Yasser Qadi at the mosque in Flower Mound. And that next day, so this would have been Wednesday, Dr. Qadi texts me and he says, "Do you think we ought to postpone?" And I'm figuring he's there in Dallas and seeing the mess that I can't see. Well, he's in Qatar. He's in Doha, Qatar. But he's hearing from people back here that it's a real mess. And so we actually had thought about moving it, but everything fell apart when we tried to move it. We just couldn't do it. And the people at the mosque said, no, it should be fine. And people in church said it should be fine. But I decided to stay an extra night in Sweetwater because of that. Well, talk about Providence. I'm parked at the RV park in Flower Mound. And somebody on X even sent me a note the day before saying, if it's the popular RV park in Flower Mound, it's really hilly. It's really hilly. And I'm like, oh, great. Well, since I stayed the extra day there in Sweetwater, once I got here to Flower Mound on the day of the dialogue, but early enough that I'd be able to get set up, changed, get to the mosque, stuff like that, I start coming into this place. It's a wonderful place. I'm looking out the window at a lake. I'm right on the lake. I mean, I'm probably 20 feet from the shore, maybe at the most, right here. This would be a great place to be in March, April, into May, in the fall. It's frigid cold right now, but there's a lot of places that are frigid cold that normally aren't frigid cold right now. But when I got here, the road into here is steep ups and downs. And I mean steep, much steeper than the gradients I was stuck on in Sweetwater. And when I got hooked up, the guy that sort of takes care of everything came by and he said, man, you're lucky you came in today. He said, they didn't get our road cleared until yesterday afternoon. And he said, I don't think you could have gotten this thing in here yesterday. And that's when I was supposed to be in and supposed to be in early. So Providence smiled on me. And I'm thinking it might be good to have a new rule that says we don't do RV travel before like February 15th. Maybe, keep December, January, and the first part of February at home, and then we can head out and go from there. Because, man, and it's supposed to be like 12 here tomorrow night, I think. And there's another cold front coming through. It's not supposed to be any precipitation, but it's supposed to be really cold again. So it's like, woohoo! Thankfully, this unit can handle it. The furnace is powerful, and I've got space heaters, and the units up there don't do much for me. Not right now. We're going to work on that. Try to get that taken care of. It's the next little project with the mobile command center. Make it so that can. This poor thing has to survive the Phoenix heat in the summer, and then I've already hit feels like temperature of 4 degrees on the last two trips with it, and so it's got to be able to handle both. It's well insulated. It's a very well built unit. People who know these units, they see it and they say, "Yeah, that's a nice unit." And with the new pole truck, man, it's just perfect. But it's still a challenge in the winter months. So speaking of the dialogue last night, we were really, really amazed at the turnout. We really didn't know what to expect. And right toward the end, the mosque started just getting flooded with calls, RSVPs, and they had to put extra chairs out. It was filled up. It really was. And so from that perspective, it was very, very successful. We had a number of Christians there, mainly Muslims, but a number of Christians came as well. And so it was great on that level. The folks at the mosque really enjoyed it. They had food for us afterwards, invited us and our wives. My wife doesn't travel with me, but over, and we had the opportunity to talk with people, and that was great. I just have to thank Yasser Qadi. I mean, he, I think, may have flown out today or maybe tomorrow, back overseas again, and then back next week. This guy's frequent flyer mile account must be astonishing. He flew all the way back here from Qatar just to do this dialogue and then head back out again. Not too many people would be willing to do that. And so I very much appreciated that and the attitude that he has. Here's the problem. The only thing that disappointed me about the dialogue was something that Christians did, and not last night. I guess a week or two ago, I'm not sure if it was the week before or 2 weeks before. I looked it up. You can find it if you put Epic Mosque Plano protest. You'll pull up videos. Some guy I've never heard of, some allegedly, I don't know if he even calls himself a Christian, but some guy wanted to get this big, huge protest going outside the Epic Mosque that Yasser Qadi is the imam of. And so they showed up, and the video that I only saw one video. It's like 2 hours and 45 minutes long. So I was sort of fast forwarding through it, trying to find stuff. And at one point, he's holding a piglet. Now, the way that Yasser put it was that they had a pig's head, and they stuffed a Quran in the pig's mouth, and I didn't see any of that. They may not have recorded it. I don't know. May have happened before or after this was videoed. I don't know. But they're just there to just make a massive statement, I guess, against Muslims in general. And I heard this guy using profanity, dropping F-bombs. He's wearing a cowboy hat. He's doing the MAGA thing, and there are people with signs, deport all Muslims, and, all this stuff going on. And evidently he wanted to burn a Quran, but wasn't allowed to by the police or something, and maybe did it someplace else. I didn't spend a lot of time with the video. I wasn't that interested. I just wanted to see what had happened. But that had taken place, and it had taken place in very recent memory for the Muslim community. And I think that changed the character of the dialogue. If you compare that one, now this one was much shorter. It was, an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 40 minutes. If you include the audience questions. They were good questions, too. They're very good questions. Well, the one question about life on other planets, we had some fun with that. But the direction that it went, I think, was very much influenced by what had happened. And so, I had at one point said, well, I don't want to get into politics. And he's like, but I do. Because the big thing in their mind right now is these people want us deported. They want us driven out. Um, we're the focus of all this stuff. And, we're now the big baddies. And so, yeah, I do want to talk politics. And so it kept going that direction. I kept trying. He's always sort of allowed me to direct things a little bit, but that also limits exactly how much I can say. It's almost like I'm the interviewer. Um, the first debate, no, not debates, the first discussion we did, and I've said many times, I'd love to debate Yasser Qadi. And he's like, I don't do debates. It's not my style. You study Christianity and Islam. I've only studied Islam. It would be unfair. Though I did say we met as he was leaving last night. They did their prayers after the dialogue, and since he's an imam, he actually led the prayers. So he's walking out, and we're talking, and very casually, and people are listening to what we're saying. And I said, if you ever grew a wild hair and wanted to do a debate on those subjects, I said, I hope I'd be on the short list of people you'd be willing to debate. And he said, oh, certainly you would be, but that's just not me. I just don't do that. That's not. But he said a lot of things that need to be debated. And from his perspective, he feels they already have been. I think it's one of the reasons that he's not really interested in it is he really feels like most of this stuff has been debated. And that I didn't want to debate that because I made the statement that much of the discussion, apologetic discussion on both sides, is not really focused on the key issues. He's like, oh yeah, sure it is. Sure, there's hundreds of them. And I'm like, that was one point where I was like, are we looking at the same YouTube? Because I don't see that that's where the focus really is. The vast majority of dawah done by Muslims and the vast majority of Christian apologetic stuff in regards to Islam is focused on stuff like Muhammad and Aisha. Okay, I mean, honestly, if you look at the number of videos on Muhammad and Aisha, some of the signs at the protest, same stuff. You look at the number of videos on that and compare that with the number of videos focusing on the key theological issues, such as does the author of the Quran demonstrate an accurate and functional knowledge of the Christian theology of that day? It's 1,000 to 1 on the Aisha side, Muhammad's child bride, not on the actual important stuff, such as the reality that the Quran claims to be the continuation of what has been nazzal, sent down. So the Torah to Moses, the Injil, the Gospel to Jesus, the Quran to Muhammad. Surah 5 lays it out. And if there's a break there to where the Quran does not connect to what came before, and I would argue, and argued in my book very strongly that there is, then that directly impacts Islamic claims, because the Muslim claim is the Quran, there's not a fingerprint of man on it. Muhammad has nothing to do with the Quran. Well, I struggle with that mightily. Their entire surahs specifically about how he is to be allowed to have more wives than somebody else. We've talked about that. We've done entire programs on that subject before. And of course, it's addressed rather fully in what every Christian needs to know about the Quran. So anyway, so there were a number of places where we really could have started a mini debate right there. And I had to push back, but we're in a mosque. He's a well-known imam. I think if you were to transcribe, if you had AI transcribe the words that were spoken, that it was probably 60-40 on his side. I'm not complaining about that. I'm just simply saying that was just sort of the reality of how it worked out. I was really interested in some of the soteriological statements. He literally said, "Oh, we do believe that you can describe men as dead in sin." Um, I don't believe he has read a lot of Christian theology to know what we mean by that. So I'm trying to talk about spiritual capacity and ability and rebellion, suppression of the truth. It's hard to do that in a brief period of time because there are parallel categories, but they're not necessarily connected together. So Islam does have the idea that there was this mithaq, this covenant that was made between God and Adam, and that all of Adam's progeny are involved in this covenant, so that they all, before creation, had said, Allah is our Lord. All of us had. And so we're all born as monotheists under that covenant that was made in Adam. And so there is something called the fitra, this remembrance, this memory of that having happened. And that's the parallel to image of God. He even said that, I think he said it was Trinity, that even used the phrase image of God. Well, I've talked to a lot of Muslims, and man, they just don't want anything to do with that phraseology. It's like, no. Allah has no image, no likeness. Man is not in the image of God. But he was like, well, it is used by one scholar. Well, okay, one scholar using it, what's the context in which he used it? And does it have a direct parallel to what we're talking about when we talk about image of God? That would have been something to expand upon. You don't get to do that in this type of a context. Anyway, I judge these types of events very much by what kind of doors they open and by the reaction, especially of the Muslims afterwards. So 9 years ago, it's been 9 years since Dr. Cotty and I had done the 2 dialogues in Tennessee, in Memphis. And after those dialogues 9 years ago, there had been great interactions. The Christians and the Muslims were talking together afterwards rather than just immediately segregating and going different directions. And I had Muslims ask me wonderful questions, especially at the mosque. I've told the story before, the 2 young ladies who asked the in-depth question. And I've often asked my critics who want to criticize what we're doing and stuff like that, would you have been able to answer the question that the 2 Muslim ladies asked me, young ladies asked me, after the second dialogue, which was, how do you deal with the influence of Emperor Constantine on the definition of homoousios at the Council of Nicaea? And most of my critics would not want to have to provide a stand-up, unprepared, unscripted, unresearched response to someone in that context. But anyway, last night, interestingly enough, I had 2 young ladies come up to me and ask an excellent, in-depth theological question regarding the relationship of the Old and New Testaments, and why do we need 2? And gave me the opportunity of explaining the intimate relationship between the Hebrew Scriptures and the Christian Greek Scriptures, and how often the Hebrew Scriptures are quoted in the in the New Testament, and had a number of other Muslims come up. And I could tell by the nature of the questions that they had not only been listening carefully, but that they were desirous to ask these questions because they felt respected and they felt like a door had been opened and that they could get answers that they had not gotten in other contexts. And that's, to me, is the important part. I recognize that for many, many evangelicals, for want of a better term, that do not have the long range goal of opening these doors, that's not enough. That's not a basis upon which they would judge the success or even the danger of doing these things. And I was also struck by the reality that whether you're reformed or not has a huge influence, a huge impact on how you view this kind of an encounter. Because if you are, well, the folks that have arranged, as soon as I'm done here, I've got to tear this stuff down real quick. I may not even get it done tonight, and then I've got to shoot over to the church, Christ Presbyterian Church, which is right next door. I mean, I didn't realize how close they are to each other, to the mosque. And I parked in the church parking lot, for example. And so Lane is my contact here. Known Lane for many years. Lane is the guilty party of having set up the Tassi debate. So if you enjoy Radio Free Geneva's opening and that amazing statement from Brother Tassi about middle knowledge, Lane's the one to blame for that. Or credit if you want. I do the blame part. If he wants to take credit, that's good. I know he's listening right now, so I'm just sort of having fun with that. And his wife and my daughter are like twinsies. And they haven't gotten to see each other for a long time. So we were having fun sending pictures last night afterwards. And, hey, look who's here. It was fun. Anyway, so Lane had mentioned to me that Yasser had said that he would be open to doing further stuff here in the area. We certainly had not intended to wait 9 years to do this, but maybe we will be able to do something a little bit more quickly along those lines. But the church there is an OPC church, and so they're reformed and they have good relationships with the mosque. And Lane had mentioned to me afterwards, he said something along the lines of, I could look it up here, I guess. He said, man, so many times what I was listening to sounded like I was listening to an Arminian. And it's true. The perspective that was presented by Yasser Qadi, we would identify, it's anachronistic to do this, but we would definitely identify as Pelagian in regards to man's capacities. Like I said, he surprised me with some of the, well, Allah has to guide you, and we did touch on predestination, election, and Qadr a little bit. I could tell he didn't want to go too deep on that. But so much of what was said was based on man's doing good deeds and stuff. And they took audience questions, and a Christian lady stood up. And I really appreciate her question. It was well stated. She talked about receiving the righteousness of Jesus Christ and His blood forgiving our sins, and it was well done. And asked Yasser how he responded to that, and his response was literally to say that Muslims do good deeds. Um, and he did try to sort of say, in response to the graciousness and generous actions of Allah and things like that. But he also used the line at one point that we are worthy of salvation, and I think that was the sharpest disagreement. He was like, yeah, the Christian view, of Adam and stuff like that. No, Adam is our example, and Adam was great, and it's good to be an Adam. Because I was talking about being an Adam, receive what you receive from Adam, death. If you're in Christ, you receive what you receive from Christ, which is life. No. We have a much higher view of man, and I couldn't help but think, just sort of briefly, if if Leighton Flowers had been in the audience, if he would have been uncomfortable being on the Muslim side of that particular exchange, because he would have been. Oh, by the way, there were 2 more missionaries there. There were 2 LDS missionaries. I guess there's a ward nearby. And that's what they do. They were looking for opportunities to talk to people and set up appointments and proselytize. They may show up tonight. And, if they do, I didn't get a chance to talk. I mean, I greeted them when I saw them because I recognized who they were. And if they show up tonight, I may need to make sure they're sort of held in place when we get done so I can talk to them. But anyway, so that was interesting that they were there. So yeah, it was, the questions in general were really good. One of the questioners obviously knew Islam. When I talked to him afterwards, he's listened to my debates and stuff like that. But he really did press him on the fact that the historic viewpoint of Islam is that non-Muslims do not get to heaven. And Yasser tries to go, well, they're judged individually. And I really think that he pushes hard that direction. And I think he does so because of where he comes from. I would wonder, honestly, I'd like to ask him this, if he has that same emphasis when he's speaking overseas in Muslim majority countries rather than here in the United States. Now, his focus is here in the US and, the Epic Mosque and stuff like that. Rich, that background looks really good today. It really does. I mean, that looks like a real stone wall. You've got to admit, that looks really good. And I know you hate the colors, but I don't care. That actually, I mean, there's the fan's not on, nothing's moving, so it actually looks like a wall. During the summer we've got to have air moving, or I'm going to be a sweaty mess. But that actually looks good today. Just thought I'd mention that in passing. Anyway, so and by the way, I'm feeling under no pressure to do a full hour or something today. I just want to give the thing. But I might, because I might comment on the Joel Webben thing too, just for the fun of it at the end, just because it's so wildly crazy. Well, and you might go, which Joel Webben thing? There's something new every day. Yeah, and there is. But I haven't done a program in so long, the whole week while traveling, that there's a whole bunch of Joel Webben stuff you can talk about today. But I'm specifically referring to his attempted response to Doug Wilson, where, Joel has become the biggest victim card player I've ever seen. It really is. But anyway, back to what we're talking about here. So, yeah, back to Lane and the OPC and stuff like that. There's such a huge difference in how Reformed people approach the subject of reaching out to Muslims and how to do it. We can be patient. And in fact, we have to be patient because we remember what Paul said to Timothy. He said, I endure all things for the sake of the elect. That included the attacks of the Jews, his own people against himself, imprisonment, everything. He endured all those things for the sake of the elect. He knew that God would use him for God's purposes, for God's glory, in God's time. And when you don't have that perspective, see what I love about that statement to Timothy by Paul is that he doesn't stop and give a big long explanation and all that kind of stuff. He doesn't at all. Instead, it's said in such a way that you can tell it's the shared conviction, the settled shared conviction of both Paul and Timothy. Because if it was some new thing, he'd have to stop and explain it and give the foundation, all that stuff. No, he just says it in passing, which means it was part of the regular preaching and teaching that he had already given to Timothy in all their times together in the past. And now, as he was getting ready to depart this world, he could just make reference to it and know that Timothy shares that perspective. Well, let's just be honest. Not a lot of quote-unquote evangelical Christians function on the foundation that I endure all things for the sake of the elect. God has his elect, and we are called to be used by Christ to bring about their salvation and then to edify them in the church. That's our purpose in this world. We glorify Christ in the fellowship of the faith by being used as the instruments by which he draws his elect unto himself, and then we edify them, build them up in the fellowship of the church. That's why we're here. That's why when you get saved, God doesn't go whoop, and you just go to heaven immediately. He has purposes for you. He has things for you to do. You're be conformed to the image of Christ as you work in that way, and that can be extremely joyous, or it can be very toilsome at times. So that's what's missing for a lot of people who seek to minister to Muslims. And I think that's why there are so few people who do. You have some people, you've got your diehards out there. But still, the reality is the majority of the people that are going to have the long-term impacts, or let's put it this way, if Muslims are looking out at Christians, who are they going to go, that person is someone I want to talk to? The guy with the pig in his hands outside the mosque wanting to burn a Quran? He is as repulsive to the Christian message to the Muslim as can be. If you want an example of how to get completely in the way of the message, completely in the way of the gospel, put your own face of offense out there to be the biggest hindrance to the gospel, there it is. There you go. But if you want to be honest about the disagreements and say to the other side, I'm willing to talk about this. I want to talk about this. I myself am the recipient of grace. I am not some super person who deserved any of this. None of us do. And I would be glad to talk to you about how I obtain peace with God. Who are they going to talk to? They know who they're going to be able to talk to. And look, we also recognize if the Spirit of God does not bring conviction of sin, if the Spirit of God does not convict a Muslim of their own self-righteousness, because there's a lot of that, I can't argue them into the faith. And I won't. I'd have to lie to them. I'd have to use methodologies that are utterly inconsistent with the gospel. So who's going to be the long-term, 20, 30-year neighbor type witness to the Muslims? It's not going to be the Arminian evangelical. Believe me, I'm not sitting here going, yeah, it's just the Reformed. The Reformed can be just as offensive and as big a pile of jerks as anybody else. And I admitted that last night. I started off saying, man, I've been trying for years to get especially those of us who are Reformed to be actively involved in putting ourselves on the line, praying for Muslims, being available, learning about their life, their belief, being the kind of people that they'd be willing to come and ask. If the Spirit of God moved amongst them, who would they come and ask? Who would they be able to go? Who are the Christians who accurately represented us, who consistently over time befriended us and said, "I'm here. Let's talk." Who's it going to be? Yeah. And I said, I've pretty much failed because I hear Reformed people aren't going to be generally as crude as the guy doing the protest. But they can get pretty crude. They can get pretty crude. And as I look at the Christless nationalists, and silence Jew, it's Christmas, it's going to be the exact same attitude toward a Muslim. Those guys are not praying for Muslims. They're not going out, putting themselves in the line. Are you kidding? They want them. They're just as much into the send them all home. They don't belong here crowd as anybody else. They don't want them nearby. They don't want to witness to them. They're not reaching out to them. And I'm scared of what they might think outreach is. More of the protests and that kind of thing. Not actual evangelistic outreach that would have any semblance of an opportunity of working if the Spirit of God blessed it. So it just seems to me that we're the ones doing that. Now, I was going to do this on Monday, and then that didn't work, and it's been a long week. Late last week, I got this, and oh goodness, hold on a second here. I forgot to pull this up. I need to find. Please forgive me. There was a guy. I saw a tweet from Yasser Qadi. Here he is. And it was posted by Alexander Duncan at Alex Duncan TX. He is the CEO and co-founder of Patriot Pouch. His thing says, Patriot Pouch, fighting for the Constitution, standing for America first, keeping Texas strong and free. CEO and co-founder of at Patriot Pouch, which I guess is some kind of nicotine-free chewing tobacco. Okay. And evidently he did try to run for Senate, but didn't make it through the primary process. So I don't know. But he, let's see. Yeah, there you go. Posted 21 minutes ago, according to this anyways. And here's, 26 minutes ago, this is Islam. Anyone that is Muslim must want Sharia for the entire world. Eradicate, the next one, 29 minutes ago, eradicate Islam from America, et cetera, et cetera. So, and 3 hours ago, begin a life-transforming relationship with Jesus Christ today. So there's even an image on his website. And I went to his website because I wanted to see if there's a contact. I wanted to try to get hold of him because he will not respond to me. I tried multiple messages to get him to respond to me. He will not. But there's a picture of him, and he's holding this Patriot Pouch thing. You know those round tins that tobacco suckers do. And he's got a John 14:6 bracelet on. Now, maybe it's not him, but I think he's pretty much the whole company. John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Okay, there you go. So Alexander Duncan posted this video. And Yasser Qadi responded to it. And so I read what Yasser said. And I don't think I had heard this talk before, but I know enough about Yasser Qadi's position to realize that this was a highly edited video. And later I saw that there is you'll see it right at the beginning. only thus, which I think is from Instagram. ONLYTHUS. I don't have an Instagram account. I'm not going to install Instagram, so you can't really do anything there. The web interface has never worked for me, so I couldn't ask this. And on X, only thus has only posted a few things and hasn't for a long, long time. So anyway, I asked him, did you produce this yourself? Did you, who gave it to you? Do you not realize this is a horrific misrepresentation? Because I contacted Dr. Kadi. I said, could you link me to the original presentation? He did immediately. I downloaded it, discovered it was from 2007. So long time ago. And I listened to the whole thing. And as Dr. Kadi had said, he did respond to Duncan. He said, this is slanderous. You are making me say the exact opposite of what I actually said. You are horribly deceptive and dishonest. And of course, he didn't respond to him either. So here's a guy, he's using Christian lingo to sell a product. And the product is America, anti-Islamic propaganda. Okay? So, like I said, I did due diligence, sent multiple messages, asked other people. I went on this website. Only the landing page worked. All the other links were dead. So that was a little creepy, a little strange. That's normally an indication that you might not want to buy a product there because it's not really real. But I tried. I think all of us need to see how this is done. It's only a 40-second clip, 39 seconds. But this is what Duncan posted, and this is what Only Thus produced. And I'm going to put it up here, and hopefully this will work for us. Here's what was produced, put out there. And you'll notice it says right at the beginning, it says, Muslim scholar Yasser Qadi say that, instead of says that. People can, why don't you proofread what you're posting? Says that the Muslims living in the West have a goal, quote, to wipe away our religions and replace it with Islam, end quote. Okay. Here's what it says.
Muslims living in Western secular democracies. We're talking about Europe, Canada, America, Australia, just the Western secular democracies, that's it. What is our goal as a community? What is our final result that we're aiming for when we're living here? Establish a khilafah where we live? Do we wish to turn America and England into Islamic republics and states? Or do we wish to convert the entire population? Our goal living amongst all of you is to wipe away your religion and to replace it with Islam.
Okay, there's the presentation. If you watch closely, you see that it's highly edited. That no attempt was really made to try to make it smooth at all. And the reality is that presentation is, and I will try to link to it, that presentation is still online. And it is desperately deceptive. Anybody who would listen to what Dr. Kadi actually said knows he was saying the exact opposite. And the quotes were when he was quoting positions he was rejecting. His specific assertion was, we desire the freedom to live our Islam, to let others choose what they wish to choose. We are not seeking to do these things. He was saying the exact opposite of what the video was made to make him say. And as someone who's had people do that type of stuff to me, and I've had to call it out, look, the horrible thing here, other than the fact that this Only Thus, whoever this Only Thus is, they know that they're lying. And it makes you wonder, if they're so opposed to Islam, why don't they oppose it with truth? Why do they have to lie about it? What's the benefit? If you have to lie about the other side, don't you ever stop and go, why can't I use the truth against the other side? Well, think about that. So whoever this at only thus person is a liar. They're dishonest. They're deceptive. They're slanderous. And they may think, well, but they're a Muslim. I can do that. And I have heard Christians say that. We don't have to worry about that. They're unbelievers. We can treat them like this. Don't you realize that's how many Muslims treat Christians in Muslim nations? They're the dhimmis. We're the ones following the true faith, and so we don't have to worry about what Christians experience here. So you're going to do the same thing in reverse, huh? Oh, okay. And then there are lots of people that complain about the subject of taqiyya. Taqiyya, the idea in some forms of Sunni Islam that you can lie to promote the truth of Islam. You can lie to unbelievers. And people point out where this has been defined by certain writers in the past, and of course, there's modern Muslims who say, "Well, we don't believe what those people said," and you've got all the argumentation there. But people will say this all the time and say, "See, here's a Muslim. He's practicing taqiyya. He's misleading the unbelievers, the kufr. They can be lied to." And so, what do? You become that kind of person and lie about the Muslims. Oh, so the guy sitting there with a John 14:6 wristband on that says Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, will use lies to promote the truth? That's what you're doing? You don't recognize not only the gross hypocrisy, but the idiocy of such a thing? I don't get it. Does anybody get it? There are so many people today, so many allegedly reformed people today, that sit back and go, well, hey, we need our nation, so we don't have to worry about that truthfulness stuff now. This is desperate stuff. It's like, what? What's going on here? You can literally put John 14:6 in your advertisement and then post this kind of garbage? Because I asked him, did you ever look at the original statements, original context? He refuses to respond. There is a text message here. Lane mentioned that someone did community note his presentation. The Duncan's guy, Alex Duncan, a community note was put on it that this is a gross misrepresentation, and here's the actual source to go to. So yeah, I did appreciate that. I saw that as well. But anyway, this is reprehensible. And immediately, as soon as I contacted Alex Duncan, there are people, there's James White knighting for the Muslims while he attacks Christian brothers who just want to establish Christian nationalism and all the rest of that stuff. And I'm like, okay, 2 questions for you. When was the last time you witnessed to a Muslim, prayed for them, and truly desired their salvation? Never an answer. Never an answer. They don't do it, and they don't want to do it. And secondly, are you seriously telling me, because I know you're not going to take the time to listen to what Dr. Cotty actually said, but are you seriously telling me that you believe that it's acceptable to use falsehood to try to promote the truth? You call yourself a follower of him who is the truth, but you will act opposite to him as if you're representing him? Never an answer. Just silence. Half of them are bots anyways, I suppose. But yeah, there you go. So this ought not to be. It ought not to be when Muslims do it to me or when Christians do it to me. But we ought not to be doing it to anybody else. Not if you call yourself a follower of Christ. That's all there is to it. Real quickly, I saw this video on YouTube. I didn't grab it, but Joel Webben trying to respond to Doug Wilson. Doug Wilson did a response on the miscegenation stuff, the interracial marriage stuff. It was a long Blog and Mablog article. I listened to it. It's on YouTube because a few days later he records them and puts it out there. And he went through a bunch of material, a lot of material, a ton of stuff. And of course, Webben's response doesn't touch any of that, ignores all of that. Instead, what does he do? He is the victim. And he's literally sitting there claiming, I should have queued it up, but he's sitting there claiming that because he supported ICE, he got 1,500 text messages and 2,000 emails and 500 this and threatening his life and all the rest of this stuff. I'm going, what? How, text messages? You put your phone number out there? And you're talking getting 500, 1,000, 1,500? Seriously? I don't believe you for a second. Not for a second. You don't have that many followers to produce that kind of a response, especially on something like that. Most of your followers are already on your side, so they wouldn't be all upset about an ICE comment anyways. Now, I don't believe it for a second. But it's oh, look at me. Doug Wilson attacked me while all the people on the left are attacking me, and then he's trying to stab me in the back. So you got people from the right and people from the left. So you need to subscribe to me. We're NXR. We are the new Christian right. And so you need to subscribe on Patreon and give us money and give us clicks. And he literally, even in it, said, so you former Canon subscribers. So he's saying you need to get rid of Doug Wilson. You need to just unsubscribe from Canon and subscribe to me. It's just so sad. It really is. It's just he has become a professional victim, all in the service of his own self-aggrandizement. It is. I don't know where it's going to go, but the end is going to be ugly. And again, I already said it. End of 2026. I was right about the end of 2025. So, but I'm just simply saying, at the speed, the trajectory, the spin, it's gonna get bad by the end of this year. It really is. And I don't believe for a second that he got that many responses to anything he's gonna say. Just massive self-promotion for the idea of getting more clicks. That's all there is to it. And you'll notice we don't have any of that stuff. If you want to support Alpha Omega Ministries, that's great, but we don't do the Patreon stuff and all that. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't have the subscription stuff, and there's lots of revenue streams. We've always said, yeah. And the one reason why that only Rich and I were the only two that work for the ministry, and the board certainly agrees with this. So we can say what we need to say when we need to say it. Period. End of discussion. That's why. Could we have more support? Yeah, probably. Maybe. I actually hope that the reason we have the supporters we have is because they appreciate that we don't do that. That we can say it we need to say it when we need to say it. That's what we've always been about. Anyway, all right. Busy weekend. Next week, the debate on Friday. 6 debates next weekend. Looks like the weather's going to be good here in Dallas, thankfully. And then I shoot down to Baton Rouge. I'll be at Salem Reformed Baptist Church. The information's on the website. The new, it's not a new, but newly grown bigger Reformed Baptist Church down there in the Livingston area. And be there Sunday school, morning service, evening service. And then we head back and hopefully be able to do some programs on our way back, sort of catch up for only doing one program this week. But hey, we're on the road, we're busy, and tomorrow's going to be really cold, but after that, might get livable again for a while. So hopefully no more getting stuck in, yes, we have ordered snow defreezing, ice melting stuff. I won't have it for the rest of this trip, but I'm going to put together a winter survival thing that I should have had this time. But that stuff, a little shovel, you know, practice putting the chains on, and we'll do better next time. You don't do that stuff until you have to, you know. And now I know, yeah, you have to. I live in Phoenix, man. Come on. Frozen stuff doesn't fall out of the sky in Phoenix. It's you all live in weird places. Anyways, what am I doing here? Oh yeah, I've got to somehow get out of here. So we will we'll let you know the next time we have the opportunity to do a program. I don't know when it will be, but you will be invited to be a part of it. So thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time. God bless.